Welcome to the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit and are celebrating the 20th anniversary of 11 Days of Global Unity. My name is Jana Larsen, and I am the Human Resources and Deputy Director for We the World. Today, I am very pleased to introduce our own Subrata Banerjee of We the World and his guest, who he will properly introduce for today's special presentation on the theme of human rights, a very complicated and complex topic around the world. And our focus today features a dialogue which is facilitated by Subrata in India. This is part two of our two-part discussion on human rights with social development and gender specialist Subrata Banerjee. For the full 11-day schedule, you can register for free by going to 11daysofglobalunity.org. And note that 11 is a numeral. So once again, that is 11daysofglobalunity.org. At the website, you can see replays of the recordings as well. You can also make a contribution to support We the World by going to we.net. We thank you and we gratefully appreciate your gift, no matter how small, for every gift is a gift indeed. Subrata, I now pass the presentation feather to you to introduce your esteemed guest today for part two of this very special conversation. Subrata?
Uh, Thank you, Jana, for such kind of very nice introduction. And also, it's very important to have a glimpse of the history of with the world, what we have been doing, our work and our active presence across many continents of the world throughout the year. We are taking different kinds of activities and programs. And right at the moment, as you have already explained that it is the we are observing 11 days of global unity, and on this occasion we have summit panels, and the summit speakers, summit panels of different countries. And today we have Mr. Indrajit Bose. I just want to introduce Indrajit. Indrajit Bose is based right at the moment in India, but he has a extensive experience, global experience across many countries, Asia, Africa, Latin America, as well as Europe. And his main area of interest and professional expertise lie in the area of child protection, child rights, child safeguarding, this area where he has been working for more than 20 years across many countries. And he worked with many globally renowned organizations of the world. And he's the instrumental in changing many of the facets of the programs of child protection, child safeguarding in different countries wherever he had the opportunity to visit and collaborate with different governments of Asia regional countries, as well as the country head, that means country directors and many other high officials. And at the same time, he has been instrumental in introducing certain kind of very novel ideas, as well as address a lots of issues in relation to child protection as well as child safeguarding issues. And his extensive experience we'll be listening today. And on this, I don't take much time, so I will invite Mr. Indrajit Bose to talk about child protection and child rights issues, especially in reference to conflict war situations in the world today. So over to Indrajit.
Uh, Thank you, Subrata. And I'm really thankful for this unique opportunity being provided to share my expertise on child rights. On the onset of this discussion and the panel subject matter, let me share that we have a United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which basically is the important instrument and which is also a legally binding international agreement across the world to ensure that the rights of the children are being taken care of. Now, this United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which in short form we call as UNCRC, is part of the human rights interventions across the world. So as I shared that this is a legally binding instrument, that means all the countries across the globe is responsible and binded by look into the different articles and frame policies and laws specifically in order to protect the children and ensure that rights are being taken care of. So as I shared, this UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, it is right now being agreed upon by approximately 196 countries around the world and being ratified by most of them except one, that is US. But the legal document says that all the countries are bound to follow the international directions to ensure the rights of the child. So this article which I am speaking about, it contains 54 articles in it, and there are 3 optional protocols. When we are talking about optional protocols on the rights, the entire component of UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is covered into 4 core areas. That is, one is the right for survival, second is the right for development, the third is for the right of protection, and the fourth would be the right of participation. So these are the 4 family of rights within which the entire UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is focusing on. Now, as the today's topic, when we're talking about the right to protection in the context of conflict and war scenarios, I would like to share some data, not much, but a little data which will give you an idea that what is the situation of children during this conflict and a war scenario. So around 468 million children are right now living with the effects of war and conflict across the world. And that is approximately more than 1/6 of the global population of children in our planet. It's a huge number of children who are affected by this conflict and war. Apart from that, approximately 30 million children are being displaced because of the situation. So it's really alarming to know that the rights of the children are significantly violated when we talk about the displacement and other forms of concerns from the situation of war and conflict. Let me take you down to the areas which affect a child during a conflict and during the situation of a war. So whenever there's a war or a conflict, mostly the rights of the child is violated. May it be the right to survival, may it be the right to protection, and may it be the right to development and so on. So when I'm saying about right to development, right to education comes under the umbrella of right to development. So it pains me when I'm sharing my experience about the children who are being impacted because of such scenarios of war and conflict. And there are numerous violations of human rights and child rights when we look into what has happened in the past and what is happening currently across the globe. And it is unfortunate that the numbers of children affected by the war and conflict is increasing day by day. So let me take you down to a few of the areas which affect a child when there is a war or a conflict. The primary thing is the right to survival. Whenever there is a war, there are issues where children are being killed, children are being maimed, they lose their limbs, so they basically become, disable. There is a big challenge which lies down throughout their, life. So there are numerous other issues which are being looked into when we're talking about the situation of a war and conflict. A child loses the parental care. So if there is a death in a family, the parents are basically the child is deprived from the love, care, and affection of the parents as they are either being killed or being displaced or being missing. Not only this traumatizes the child and it impacts the mental health of the child, the child also tends to lose the opportunity of education, opportunity to have a shelter, as well as, deprived of food and other basic items for survival. So there's an issue of hunger, there's issue of deprivation. Apart from this, the subsidiary, conditions which impact the child is the loss of the culture and practices when they're displaced from their home area to other places when they move out to save themselves from the scenario of war and conflict. It's a huge trauma and it's a mental agony which overall impacts the development of a child. May it be a girl child, may it be a boy. So these are basically direct effects which happens to a child when he or she is within the conflict zone. And in relation to that, there are many indirect issues which also have a severe impact on the overall development of the particular child. So the trauma and the stress the child carries throughout the life does not allow the holistic and a proper development into an adult and to be a productive person for this particular country and a world as a whole. There is a risk of recruitment of those children by armed groups, by conflicting groups into their ambit, and there's a chance that they also become a child soldier. There are risks, many other risks associated with it. So these young children, specifically the girl child, if the situation comes and arises, they are being sold, they are being exploited. The violence against a child, specifically a girl child, is very critical and very hurtful. So the chances of exploitation increases manifold when we see a situation where there is a conflict and a war ongoing. So there are certain things which needs to be looked into, and we have to understand that war is never, ever is desirable. It impacts not only the lives of the child, but also the life of the family and the community and the country and the world as a whole. It basically creates an imbalance in the society in itself. It creates deprivation and it creates a lot of issues which would take long time to be taken care of. When I'm talking about, let me take you back to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So the duty bearers to ensure that the right of the child is being taken care of is the government and the state parties. So they are responsible to ensure that the child is safe, the child is healthy, and the child is protected. In many scenarios, we have seen across the world where there's a great, issue which comes along when the government is directly involved, either recruiting those children for the war or exploiting them as part of the machinery supporting the war scenario. So this is a grave violence of the child rights per se, and this is an international concern for all of us. Saying so, as I mentioned, that there are a number of issues which comes along with these two situations, may be at any part of the world, without looking into the dimensions and the geopolitical concerns. It becomes a necessity for all of us, not only the NGOs, the INGOs, not only the civil society, but also the government and other responsible duty bearers to take care of and ensure that this doesn't happen and peace lasts. So these are the areas which were more concerning in order that I wanted to share with all of you. And I would also like to share one of my experiences, which I personally, managed and could look into. And 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 this is one of the areas where I would not like to mention that particular country, but I would like to share a few pointers on that. This happened in one of the South Asian countries where I could go and visit and look into the issues of complaints received by me in contrast with various forms of violations and various forms of issues in that area related to the children. So when I went there and when I surveyed and I looked into the issues and the concerns raised by them, I had to initiate an inquiry and look into details why this is happening and how this can be dealt with, and what are the gaps and what are the responsibilities of the government in order to prevent this happening. So it took quite a long time for me to really get into the depth and then, engage with critical stakeholders in this particular mission. And you'll be surprised to know that there were many child rights violations which came forth to my notice that were grave in nature. Like for an example, the child trafficking was a major concern, child drug abuse and participation in also drug trafficking was a major issue. Malnutrition, deprivation from education, the health concerns, the shelter issues. There's a long laundry list to what all areas and what were all concerns were there. So then we had to initiate an inquiry and submit the report, share it with the government, respective government, and guided them to take, actions related to the findings of that particular situation. Yeah. So I hope I am being able to share what is required in order to understand the UN Convention on the Child Rights, its articles, and the 4 families of rights, where the child needs to be, entrusted with, and they should be allowed to have all the rights in order to survive, in order to develop, in order to have a protection area and a protection network for the overall development. Yeah. Subrata.
Thank you so much, Mr. Indrajit Bose, for delivering this kind of excellent lecture on the issues, various issues of child rights and child protection. And since you have extensive experience across many countries of Asia, Africa, Latin America, you had discussed in detail all about the situations and all about the challenges, issues facing by every children in many countries. Now, as we know that childrens are the center of our whole of development. It means childrens are the biggest asset to any country because they are the future of the country. future of the family as well as the community. So if it is the case that a children is the future of a nation, future of a country, future of a family, it means a lot of responsibility that we need to take, both at the family level, at the institutional level, as well as the community level, or at the and of course at the national level, where public institutions are fully responsible for this kind of activities. The most interesting thing is that while we think of children, we are thinking of about lots of huge investment. All our whole attention should be on children, because their well-being, their protection, their education, their healthcare, everything depends on how the children will grow up in future course of time, and how the children will participate in the economic development of a nation as well. So if we neglect children in the long course of time, we are neglecting their rights and protection issues, then a nation will definitely suffer a lot. So in this regard, your discussion, your explanations are excellent. I have only one question to you on this matter. Since you have discussed a lot about conflict and war situation challenges facing by the children, can you tell us a little bit about the role of policy-making bodies in regard to addressing this kind of situations of children are facing, especially in reference to conflict situations, the challenges children are facing, and what kind of activities they will take in course of time to address the child rights, to address and protect the children's well-being in course of time. So if you give us just in brief about this policy level actions, policy as well as action level activities, then it will be very helpful for us to understand the overall situation. Over to
Okay.
Indra.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Shubhra. It's a quite pertinent question. When we look into the policy concerns and the policy issues, our country should have a clear definition that in terms of what is their particular role and what are their particular viewpoints specific to either conflict or a war scenario to address certain situations, and then look into the issues which might come around, if such kind of situation arises. Yeah. So when I talk about the policy of a government, it should be what should I say? It should be an inclusive policy to bringing in, different core stakeholders if they really want to look into the concern areas and work together. So as I mentioned earlier, the duty bearer is the government, but again, you rightly mentioned that everyone in the society is responsible somewhere by somehow to really assist each other together that we can. So the government should call in and form a committee in terms of involving core stakeholders to take, decisions and look into the areas which needs to be addressed. One. The second would be in terms of how much serious the government is towards their commitment by ensuring a proper financial allocation and a budget to it so as to address the ground realities. Because when I'm saying about conflict and displacement and other things, it requires a huge investment. When you're talking about the short-term issues that can be dealt with certain funding, and it can be dealt with certain help and assistance. But when you talk about a long-term settlement, and we're talking about a long-term, what should I say, a curative action, it requires a concerted effort from all the core stakeholders to take it forward over the period of time. It cannot end in 1 or 2 years. It would be a longer duration. So as it's going to be a longer duration involvement, engagement, the commitment should be clear and the budget allocation should be appropriate in order to address it. This is one. The other would be in terms of pooling the resources. When I'm talking about pooling of the resources, this would be the core responsibility of the INGOs and the NGOs working in this particular field, who are experts in terms of dealing with certain scenarios and this kind of, So that tool would act as a core component, as I would rather say, as a core in terms of guiding certain processes and what's the actionable points. As you mentioned, the actionable points, yes, there should be a number of actions. It's very difficult to just spell it out what all actions should be taken, but yes, again, the protection of a child is core. If we say that this kind of war and conflict is arising, so the prime action would be how to protect the children. If need be, how could they be, taken away from that particular scenario and their life be saved? So this is the prime action. Secondary would be the other areas where, the mental health concerns, the education, the nurturing, the care, the affection, and all other areas needs to be looked into. Further down the line, if a child has, either lost his or her parent, in the longer duration, the government should be committed to ensure that the child is placed to a loving family in terms of a longer duration of a care, so that he or she, goes. I wouldn't say in a normal scenario or a normal situation, but again, it could be, worked upon to reduce the trauma, to reduce the effect. So, in my opinion, this way we can work together to ensure that, the child is taken care of and his or her rights are being ensured. Yeah, if I'm okay with that answer.
Thank you so much. That we understand that your viewpoints, and it's particularly a serious case about when children are in a challenging situations, and it is also true that the role is one of the very critical role government should play in terms of policy as well as actionable points through programs at the ground level. So this is very, very critical and important in today's world where many children, millions of children are facing their life-threatening situation across many countries, including Ukraine, Palestine, and many other parts of the world. So thank you very much for highlighting this kind of critical issues and our obligations of NGOs, obligations of government, family, everyone, and we should be working together to facilitate and to protect the children in course of time. So I think now, right at the moment, Jana will take over to Jana for any other questions.
Yeah.
Well, I do not have any questions. You've presented a very good explanation of the situation of children, and it is so true that the children are our future, and it is such a problem around the globe. The issue of how children are not being taken care of in the way that they need to grow and to be global citizens of the world. So I guess we all have a lot to do. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. This has been a really amazing conversation. I so appreciate your being here. And thank all of you for watching this and for being a part of the 20th anniversary of 11 Days of Global Unity. Please go to we.net to get involved and even make a contribution if you want. And now, let's go from a me society to a we society.
Yeah.
Goodbye and thank you.
Thanks. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.